Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've got another 4 films in the Marvel ranking that I'm doing. Getting closer now to that number 1, and obviously now we're getting closer to the release of Endgame, so getting very excited now. As I said before, there will be spoilers for the films that I'm about to do here, so if you haven't seen them, skip it, or if not, just enjoy. Anyway, moving on swiftly to my next film, which is... So the first film on this list is going to be Captain America: The Winter Soldier, the second of the Captain America films coming out post-Avengers, and I really like this one. This is kind of a little bit of a different swerve because it's like a sort of spy adventure mixed in with the usual movie MCU stuff. I liked it because it kind of took Captain America out of that fish out of water sort of story we'd kind of seen in a little bit of the Avengers when he didn't quite understand some of the pop culture references and kind of was a little bit out of his depth when he wasn't in any sort of battle. This kind of erodes that he's kind of used to this time period now, so he's much more comfortable. He did a little gag at the start when he's got the list of all the stuff he needs to catch up on that he's missed, but that was kind of funny. Obviously we get to meet Falcon for the first time, Anthony Mackie's character, who is another veteran, so that's why they have their sort of connection. Although they're from 2 different time periods of battle, they share a lot of the inner turmoil that goes on with battle, so that's how they kind of control, which I really liked as well. And we get Robert Redford as Alexander Pierce, who is the main villain of the piece, which is really good as well. It wasn't some big maniacal villain, it was just a very thoughtful, very methodical kind of guy who was using the influence of Hydra, which we find out has been infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. for years, ever since the war. They've been slowly integrating themselves, building up for this big reveal of Hydra. It turns out half the agency are Hydra, which is a little far-fetched because there's a lot of events that happen as to why Hydra hadn't emerged before this, especially when they had the possession of the Tesseract within S.H.I.E.L.D. Why didn't they just take over then? Because that's what Red Skull was after originally, was the Tesseract. So anyway, it comes out in this film, which was a nice little twist as well. It kind of really changed the dynamics of the MCU, especially with S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. Nick Fury is really good at this one as well. I think Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, she's good, but this is probably the weakest time I think I see her. I don't know how necessary she really is. I think you could have done the film without her in it, but she's still a nice addition to the cast. Her back and forward and chemistry with Chris Evans and Steve Rogers is really good. But as I've said before in the original Captain America, I think the use of Bucky was really good in this and as a Winter Soldier, but there was no real build up. We just threw him in there. So obviously on the comics he's the Winter Soldier, so I would like to see maybe in the original Captain America to have him build up to make him that you think, oh, he's going to come back, or to kind of plant those seeds, but he kind of doesn't. He just dies in that one, and he just turns up this. So it's a bit of a lackluster, and he's not really the villain, although he's kind of the main sort of physical threat to Captain America, because Alexander Pierce isn't. You can always see he was always going to make it through and he was going to make it out. But it's still a really good adventure film. It's definitely something worth watching, so definitely 100% a recommendation. I do like the Captain America suit in this as well, the black version. Probably the best one over than the sparkle. All colours is a bit much. Anyway, so moving on to the next film on the list, which is... So the next film is going to be Spider-Man Homecoming, the Marvel MCU version of Spider-Man. We've had many versions of Spider-Man before. We've had 2 Sony versions with Tobey Maguire, then we had the reboot version, which is the Amazing Spider-Man, which was Andrew Garfield. But now this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe version with Tom Holland playing the titular role of Spider-Man, who does get introduced in Civil War, but this is when we really get to meet him and find out who he is. And what I really liked about this, they kept it in a high school setting, which the original Spider-Man in the comics is. He is a teenager. He is vastly inexperienced when it comes to life. Obviously, he has the tragedies of obviously Uncle Ben dying, which we don't see in this film. That's kind of all glossed over because we've seen it many times before. We know how Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man, so I kind of liked it. Just jumped straight in. This is what he is at now, maybe a year or so after him being Spider-Man. I think it's about 8 months, they say. But I really liked it. I really liked sort of the John Hughes sort of Breakfast Club type feel mixed in with the superhero-ness. Michael Keaton as the Vulture is amazing. I think he's probably one of the best villains that we've had in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the sort of reveal you get when Peter goes to pick up his date for the homecoming and Michael Keaton opens the door, it's just that genuine shock of, oh my god. Although, like, you can pretty much see it coming because in most Spider-Man films the villain is tied to Spider-Man himself in some way or another, but just that when he opens that door, and it's just that has that menacing look, Michael Keaton, where he's really friendly, he's really nice, but he could kill you at any moment, which I really liked about his character. And again, the Spider-Man, I love the suit, I think it's great. all the modern tech. They do lean a little bit into sort of the Iron Man connection in this. He's sort of the mentor to him. He kind of gives the speech of, without great power becomes great responsibility, that we've heard in Spider-Man films before. I think it was maybe overused. I would like to see just Tony Stark there not turn up in the Iron Man suit when he comes to save the ship. And that was spoiled in the trailers as well. So it would have been nice to see Tony just be this mentor character without the suit and everything. A little bit more step back. But I really enjoyed it. It's a really fun film. It's probably the best Spider-Man film. Tom Holland is definitely my favourite Spider-Man out of the two. There's no discredit to Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. They did great jobs, but Tom Holland really nails it. Nails the Peter Parker role, nails the Spider-Man role really well. So it's definitely 100% worth a watch. Anyway, so moving on swiftly to my next film, which is... So the next film on the list is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. This was a real surprise hit. When I first saw this film was announced, I thought this was going to be Marvel's kind of flop. I think this is when their momentum ends, because it's just a weird group of characters that no one's ever heard of, and it's not even based off the original Guardians of the Galaxy comic. It's kind of the sort of reboot that they did. So this is going to fail, but this turned out to be great. It's one of the funniest films that they've ever done. The chemistry between the Guardians is really good. The back and forwards and the banter that they have is great. Again, the casting is on point across the board. I really like Drax in this one as well, because as I've said before, in the second one he's kind of played off as an idiot and a bit of a clown, whereas this one he has real sort of drive to his character. He just doesn't understand he's not an idiot. There's a difference how to use his humour. Chris Pratt as Peter Quill was great. Obviously he got into great shape for this one as well. If you ever saw pictures of him before this, he was quite sort of lardy sort of dude, but he pulled off style off really well. Groot steals the show mostly for saying 3 words, I am Groot, with Vin Diesel voicing him, but for an animated character to steal the show is saying something that only says 3 words is great. Again, the main problem with this is with a lot of Marvel films, it's the villain. Ronan, the accuser, just seems a bit bland. He's just typical, I just want mechanical power, I just want to destroy, I just want to rule, and it seems a bit flat, and he's humourless. He just has one sort of deadpan delivery. You don't really connect with him, and I understand that obviously because there's a lot of the characters got introduced all of the Guardians as well as obviously the Ravagers and everybody else, so someone's going to have to take a back seat. Unfortunately, he's Ronan, and because he's the main antagonist, it kind of falls a bit flat for him. But the chemistry between the Guardians and their adventures is really good. Definitely something that is 100% worth watching. Anyway, so moving to the final film of this video, which is going to be... So the next film is going to be Captain America Civil War. This is the third of the Captain America films, but this is really seen as the Avengers 2.5, because they're pretty much all in this, bar Thor and the Hulk. But all the main players are there, obviously based off very loosely off the original Civil War comic, which was about trying to register heroes, making them more liable for their actions, because they are vigilante. They go out, they save a lot of people, which they do. But what I liked in this is they showed some of the consequence of their actions, because you just see the hero parts. You see him save a building, you see him beat up a load of guys, but when they destroy a wall, it hurts people. You see the after effects of what happened in New York in the Avengers. You see the after effects of what happened in Wakanda and in Washington during the events of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And it kind of really puts their sort of heroism into perspective, and then obviously it splits the team apart, whereas Tony feels that they should be responsible for what they're doing, they should be more in line, they should be held accountable for their actions, where Steve says, no, we need the freedom to be able to save who we believe we need to save, because as he says, what if they throw us into a war they don't want to be in? So it's an interesting dynamic. It's interesting because it doesn't really kind of favour one side or the other. It kind of really sits in that middle balance, which I really liked as well. And the end part, when it's revealed that Bucky killed Tony's parents, and then it no longer becomes about their cause, it becomes about Tony and Cap having a disagreement of where they fall with what happens with Bucky, and the end fight between those. The airport scene is amazing. It is comic book dreams come to life. The fight when Ant-Man goes tall, when we get the introduction of Spider-Man, and we get the introduction of Black Panther as well, which I think are both handled really well. It's just great. But the fight at the end I really like between Tony and Cap, because it's just so full of raw emotion, and the slight criticism of the airport fight is even Scarlet Witch says, "Oh, to Hawkeye, you're pulling your punches." You don't feel like they're really trying to hurt each other. They're just trying to solve a disagreement. Whereas the fight between Iron Man and Captain America is really driven by emotion, and Tony is really trying to hurt him. Maybe even kill him if he had to. I don't know if he would have taken it that far, but it was definitely there. Obviously, Captain America is not trying to kill him. He's trying to defend himself and defend Bucky at the same time. But overall, it's great. Again, the small sort of caveat problem is the villain, because I think there's enough in this film to go on without having Baron Zemo there to kind of orchestrate the plot of Captain, because I understand what he's doing. He's trying to bring down the Avengers because of what happened in Wakanda, because this is where his family died. But he knows that he can't fight them because they're a huge force, so he needs to crumble them from within. I get the plan, but his plan is so huge and it relies on so many things happening that were outside of his control. It just seems a bit contrived. So I think there's enough going on with the Accords, and you could have done another way that Tony finds out about Bucky without Baron Zemo being there. But I understand they needed a villain for someone then to kind of fight. They didn't really want to paint Iron Man as the villain of the film, although he kind of is if you kind of look at it. But it is a really, really good film, really enjoyable. Like I said, it is kind of Avengers 2.5, but it's definitely 100% worth a watch. So that is it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back in 3 or 4 days with the top 3 of my rankings, which I'm looking forward to, and also I'll have the review at Endgame the minute I see it. Alright, thanks very much for watching. Catch you next time. Bye.